What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to a model airplane review. I'm your host, Ray. Today I'll be reviewing the NG model 1-400 scale JetBlue Airways Airbus A321. Item number 13035, released in September of 2022. In this video, I'll do an in-depth review of the model. Afterwards, I will give my opinion about the model, and I will decide whether or not I recommend it to other collectors. The box for this model is a cardstock box. The protective packaging on the inside is made from clear plastic. This box measures 13.9 centimeters long, 4 centimeters wide, and another 13.9 centimeters tall. I will show you around the box now. This is the front. Here's the bottom. Right side. Top. Left side. And the back side. Included in the box is the model, fully assembled, painted, and ready to display. Also included is an NG Model Collector Rewards Program card. Let's do a quick 360. The fuselage length for this model is 11.1 centimeters, the wingspan is 8.6 centimeters, and the height is 3 centimeters. These dimensions are accurate to 1-400 scale. This model is made primarily out of die-cast metal with some plastic components. The wheels on the landing gear are made out of rubber. We will begin with the fuselage. The nose shape on this model is excellent. It is accurate to the A321. There's a lot of detail on the fuselage, mostly printed detail, all of which looks pretty good. It seems pretty consistent as well. No issues or inaccuracies that I can think of right now. I would like to mention that this door right here, right next to it, there was a stain that I was able to remove, but you can see some remnants of it. So my piece of this model came with stains on it. Here's the vertical stabilizer. This looks decent. I do see some imperfections in the paint application. There's a chip on the corner of the leading edge right up here. There's also a stain right there, and some of the darker blue paint is poking out from underneath the light blue paint here. And there's a few other spots of these. There's also this stain right here on the blue. So the paint job didn't really fare too well here on the vertical stabilizer. The vertical stabilizer itself is actually quite nice. It has a lot of recessed panel line detail, so that's good to see. And the printed detail is just this JetBlue title. It looks pretty good, but I do see that some of the blue is poking out into the U there. Looks like on the right side things aren't much better. There's another paint chip right here, and then more of the dark blue paint is poking out from under the green this time, and then I also see some alignment issues with the prisms here. So yeah, I understand this is a kind of a hard design to do on a small part, but I think it could have been better. Let's move down the right side of the fuselage. This looks pretty good. I don't see anything worthy of complaining about. I do see a few small specks here and there, but those are mostly dust. I also see a small imperfection in the window printing right there. Oh, never mind. Just like I said, specks of dust. Thankfully, no imperfections in the printing here on the fuselage. Here's the top of the left wing. There's a lot of detail on the wings on this model. You can see the recessed panel lines for the control surfaces. Those are all clearly defined, which is nice to see. Same with the leading edge slats. Those look good. There's silver paint there as well. Two different shades of gray on the top of the wing is accurate. The printed detail on the wing looks good as well. Here's the one on the right wing. It's pretty nice. We can tell this is an A321 wing since it's got the extra fairings right here. These are tiny and they look pretty good. The undersides of the wings don't have any printed detail or as much painted detail, but they're still pretty good. No complaints about that. The winglets on this model, or rather the sharklets on this model, are decent. This one right here is pretty pointy. I think it should be a little bit longer at the top here. The one on the right side is slightly better from the looks of it, but there is some paint imperfections with the silver paint on the leading edge. Kind of does bleed onto the top there. And another thing is that the sharklets on this model are mounted at quite an angle. Not as bad as on other models, but they should be maybe a little bit more bent outwards. You can see it on this one. This one is definitely at a higher angle, and it looks like the angles are asymmetrical as well. Here's a look at the horizontal stabilizers. These are pretty nice. There is only printed detail up here on the top, just like the main wings, but there is a lot of recessed panel line details, and that definitely makes a difference here. The seam with the fuselage is decent. On the bottom, you can kind of see the joint though, so it's a little rough down here, but on the top, you can't really see it as much, so it's not terrible. The APU on this model does have an exhaust hole, which is quite impressive considering the size of this model. Usually on 1 to 400 scale models, there is no hole, so that is nice to see from NG. Moving on to the engines. The engines on this model are decent. However, the pylons that hold the engines from the wing are made from plastic, and this can present a whole new set of issues. Now, the advantage of these is that there's more detail and the shape is accurate, and it's harder to mess up a plastic part. The downside of this is that it's very weak, and you can see me bending the engine there. That's not a good sign. So if you are to accidentally break this, it'd be very hard to fix. The detail on the pylon is quite nice though, so that is good to see. With regards to the engines themselves, the shape is pretty good, as is the detail on them. You can see the exhaust nozzle there looks really nice. The fan detail is also quite good considering the size of the engine. These are pretty small, so NG was able to incorporate a lot of detail on them. However, all the praise comes to an end on the bottom here. There is a missing part of the hot section. There is like a rectangle with a triangle on top of it, shaped piece of metal that is missing from the printing or just the detail on the engines. So that's a pretty considerable inaccuracy. This model features antennae and sat domes. There's this antenna right here. This is actually pretty small. It might be too small, but it's not ridiculously small either, so we can let that slide. I do see that some of the white paint on the top end of it is chipped, so that's an inaccuracy. Move down to the rear of the aircraft, and here we have a sat dome. The sat dome is actually quite good. Sorry about that. That's better. And I spoke too soon about the sat dome because you can see that the part where it was held to a parts tree is definitely showing. You can see where it was cut off from, and that's not too good to see. But the sat dome itself is very snug with the fuselage, and it looks to be dead center as well. Actually, no, it's not. Or, yeah, it's a little bit off to the right side of the aircraft. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. Now, another thing I'd like to mention is these antennas at the rear section of the... It's still loose! Okay, I forgot to fix that. I remember when I first received this back in 2022, one of the antennas was loose, and this one just so happens to be loose. So, hey, it's got a variable angle, so I can adjust it to my preferences, if you will. There you go, that's more like it. So yeah, the antenna wasn't attached right. Thankfully, it wasn't this small one that would have been annoying to try and reattach. On the bottom of the aircraft, we have this singular antenna. This looks pretty good. It's not broken, thankfully. Here is the bottom section of the aircraft. Lots of detail on the fuselage. What I'm referring to is the printed detail. NG usually does a good job with the printed detail on the fuselage here, so that's very nice to see. The landing gear on this model seems okay at first glance, but I realized they suffered particularly in the paint application. You can definitely see that not enough gray paint was applied to the landing gear because the paint on the wing and the paint on the landing gear should be the same color, but you can very clearly see that the paint is not the same color. So insufficient paint layers were applied to the landing gear. In addition to that, some of the gaps between the gear leg parts are filled in with flash from production. That's like thin sheet metal, or not sheet metal, but just thin pieces of metal that got caught in between the gaps right there. You can see it's very flimsy, but still, those gaps are filled in. The wheels, as mentioned earlier, are made out of rubber, and they do roll smoothly, so that's nice to see. And the main gear, they are attached at an angle, which is accurate. Now, the nose gear is also attached at a forward angle, which is accurate. Might be a little bit too forward, but it's not terrible. And once again, the wheels are made out of rubber, and they roll. Time for my signature staring contest. The wing flex looks good. Once again, you can see the sharklets are asymmetrical. The one on the left is bent a bit more outwards than the one on the right. So the one on the left is accurate, the one on the right isn't. Engine clearance looks good, gear balance looks good. Vertical stabilizer placement maybe slightly to the left, not by much though. Yeah, so far so good up here. This concludes my review. It is now time for my opinion and recommendation. This model is decent, although it could have definitely been better. It for sure suffered in the quality department, as we can see by the detached antenna that I still haven't fixed 2 years later, and the staining that I referred to earlier. I wasn't able to show it, but trust me, it was there. So quality suffered. The shapes of the different features on the plane, though, those are pretty good. The only thing that I have an issue with is the sharklets. And of course, the missing feature on the hot section of the bottom side of the engines, that might be a big deal for some collectors. Me personally, it's not a huge deal. I can put up with it, but it would be nice to see that detail included. Lastly, the paint on the gear, that is just kind of whack. Come on, NG, you can do better. So I recommend this model. Just keep in mind it is not perfect. The quality is spotty with it. Your model could arrive with detached parts. Hopefully it doesn't though. So yes, I recommend the model, just be aware of the quality issues and some of the inaccuracies on it. The reason I still recommend it either way is because the mold on the model, once again, is excellent, and the details that NG does get right are pretty solid. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Feel free to check out my channel for more model airplane reviews as well as comparisons and just in general model airplane content. That's all for today. Like this video, comment your thoughts and questions. I'm happy to answer questions, and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Happy building, happy collecting, take good care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.